Fallen Order surprised me, like really surprised me. I did not expect it to be as good as it is. See, I thought the game was going to be your typical 12-hour hackney third-person action-adventure type game. Instead, what we got was a brilliant game that pulls inspiration from fantastic games such as Uncharted, Metroid, the new God of War, The Last of Us, and of course, almost escapably, the Dark Souls franchise, although it does lean more towards Sekiro. All of this leads to the best single-player Star Wars game I've ever played, and the game I want to talk about today. But first, a little history. First, let me lay down my history of Star Wars games. The first Star Wars game I played, and in fact the first piece of Star Wars I ever was exposed to, was everybody's favorite Lego game, Lego Star Wars. Kind of an ironic name considering it was only the prequels, but a fantastic minifigure adventure that was, in fact, one of the games my parents bought me when I first got my PS2. So quite a while ago. I loved this game as a child. I would spend hours just wandering around the levels, searching for collectibles, funny Easter eggs, and those all-elusive mini-kits. The game had a lot of charm, with its cutscenes purposely not being voiced because, they're Lego figures. This allowed the characters to convey emotion purely through body or, I guess, figure language and a small amount of grunts. I cannot overstate how much I loved this as a kid. The story encapsulated me and became one of my favorites. So much so that I genuinely didn't like the actual prequels when I saw them because I thought the game was better. Fallen Order actually shares some DNA with this game, such as having to come back to unlock new areas using abilities you acquire, though in LEGO Star Wars, it would be new characters with new abilities. From then I actually fell off of Star Wars. I had watched all the movies and seen some episodes of the Clone Wars on Cartoon Network, but Star Wars never really formed a strong part of my childhood. Now, Star Wars really came into prominence in my life when Disney acquired Lucasfilm back in late 2012. My YouTube homepage exploded with excited fanboys all chipping in what they think the movie would and should be like. This, for some reason, I don't know, got me really excited for the new movie and reignited my interest in the series. I went back and rewatched all the movies, and Empire became my favorite movie, not just in the series, but of all time. So needless to say, when I first saw that gameplay trailer for 2015's Battlefront at that year's E3, I was the most pumped for a game I had been in a long time. From there, my obsession with Battlefront was born, and that's a whole journey I could get into perhaps for another time, but all I need to say is that I played and followed both games religiously. So when Fallen Order was announced, I was excited, but I did have my reservations, mainly because it was Respawn that was working on it, who at that point had only developed FPS games, and because Battlefront was the FPS Star Wars game, it was known that this wasn't going to be an FPS game. So I was skeptical how good a job a relatively new studio could actually do. That was coupled with the fact that EA cancelled Visceral's single-player Star Wars game and subsequently shut the studio down. Yeah, not the best look. And when they first released that 50-minute gameplay footage that focused on a bit of story and following a linear path on Kashyyyk, my hype somewhat deflated. It was only later when Respawn released the 26-minute extended cut of the gameplay footage that hinted at actual exploration and deviation of the set path that I got invested again. They also revealed in interviews the nature of combat and how more in-depth it would be, with the player needing to unlock force abilities and only having a limited amount of force to work with, implying that you would have to be thoughtful in how you approach enemies. This put my thoughts about combat at ease, and the path shown wasn't just one set linear path, but simply one of many they had chosen to explore. The final point to convince me, however, was the discount available through Battlefront 2. It effectively rendered the deluxe edition of the game cheaper than the standard edition, and about $30 cheaper than most games. At that point I decided to take the plunge and hope for the best, and the best was yet to come. I'm gonna break this down into several aspects that caught my attention while playing this game. The intro sequence. Right from the opening sequence, the game gripped me. The camera work, the thick atmosphere, the voice acting, the lighting, the living environment, plus an Uncharted 2 style action sequence doubling as a fun tutorial from the get-go. A game can live or die on how it attracts people in its opening, and Fallen Order succeeded immensely by providing breathless action and throwing the player right into the thick of the story. No punches pulled, no time for doubt. I loved it. Depth of combat. As for combat, well, the combat has what I like to call incremental depth, TM. Now, incremental depth, TM, is basically when a combat system seems basic but slowly reveals itself to be more complex than initially shown. For example, the heavy attack. At first when you unlock it, it's just like most games' heavy attack. A slow but powerful swing, but then the game says, uh-oh, idiot, this actually requires force to use. And you're like, oh, okay. And then you realize you have to put some thought when it's best to use it and not just slap it on at the end of a combo. This forces you to assess which enemy in a group of enemies is worth focusing that heavy attack on. Because of this and a wide range of skills you acquire throughout the game, you end up subconsciously going into every multi-group battle with a game plan, and I love that. Simply running, slashing, and hacking isn't gonna work, but doing functionally the same thing, but instead this time by using focused, fast, and actually thought out attacks from skills you've gotten from practicing both looks and feels badass. The force power is also a nice touch. Being able to push an enemy off a cliff, pull a ranged enemy close to you to finish them off, or to slow a tough enemy down to catch your breath, all welcome additions. Enemies are relentless, even more so in higher difficulties. So hugging the block button or spamming the attack button is the quickest way of getting yourself into a load of trouble. Your best bet is to land those parries and be aggressive on the counterattack. Kinda like a Jedi. Don't let your fear or rage lead you to attack blindly, but rather stay calm and assess when you need to attack, when you need to block, when you need to dodge, and when you need to use a force power to assist you. It's brilliant. Plus, combat provides for some cool looking moments and some creative plays. Customization. Customization was a nice surprise with how much variety there was, both in how much was collectible and how many things could be customized. I especially liked coordinating my outfit, BD1, the mantis, and my lightsaber to the planet I was on. Although finding all the chests wasn't too big of a challenge, I enjoyed it nonetheless. Puzzles. The puzzles were relatively easy. I only really got stuck on the first one with the angry pulverizers. Also inside the first tomb, I kind of fumbled my way to success on the first puzzle with the balls, so I don't know if that one was easy or not, but the rest didn't require the big brain as much as I thought they were going to. Character relationships. At first, the relationships between the main characters feels incredibly rushed, especially on your first run when you're just trying to figure stuff out and get to grips with everything. The crew speaks to each other as if days have passed and not just a couple of hours. Since the game doesn't have loading screens, this is a huge disconnect. However, once you reach days, actual like IRL days, or what feels to you like in-game days, the crew works damn well with each other. In addition, any new faces you meet along the way are written well, and their relationships towards Cal are written, in my opinion, perfectly. I loved meeting all the various new characters and found their backstories seriously interesting. I haven't felt so invested in video game characters in a fair few years, so this was a nice change of pace. World building. For obvious video gamey reasons, the worlds you visit are abandoned by their original civilian inhabitants. But this doesn't stop their worlds from feeling lived in. The backstory you can find throughout these worlds paint interesting tales of previous tragic events, usually committed by the Empire. Dathomir is especially interesting as you learn how the inhabitants learned how to deal with the tragic events of the Clone Wars. Speaking of which, the crashed Venator on Zephyr was, in many ways, a love letter to the Clone Wars, and exploring it had me smiling throughout. Extremely well done. Atmosphere. Any Star Wars fan can appreciate Fallen Order. The only required knowledge, I would say, is the events of Revenge of the Sith, the happenings throughout the OT, and the establishment of the Inquisitors. If you are more of an invested fan, the game has many references for you to enjoy, such as Dathomir, Night Sisters, Maelurons, Lasats, Mustafa, Clone Wars, Kyber Crystal's lore, and a ton more, some of which I'm sure flew right over my head. The game drips an atmosphere with that Rebels feeling and tone, and I love it. It just feels so Star Wars. Overall, this game, in my opinion, superseded expectations. I enjoyed it thoroughly from beginning to end. The combat was challenging, the atmosphere thick, the storytelling engaging, holy shit, what a tense and exciting ending moment. An unexpected death in many aspects has solidified this as the best game I've played all year, and I'm excited to see what is next. All I can hope for is that this is the path future Star Wars games are on. Because if that's the case, us Star Wars fans are in good hands.